Hey everybody, Justin here. I'm back. Probably about 45 minutes since I did the last one. But welcome to, I'm just gonna call it my favorite albums. So this is a follow-up to the last stream I did, which I did maybe about an hour and a couple hours ago, about my top 10 favorite albums of all time. So please check that one out if you haven't checked that one out. This one is about basically some of my favorite albums. I'm just calling it my favorite albums because the albums that I'm going to show and talk a little bit about are ones that I pulled from my big shelf full of vinyl back here. You can kind of see that there's some stuff mixing because I pulled a lot of stuff. But I kind of went through and pulled out like the first, the first things that came to mind. Um, so I'm kind of looking through, like, oh, this one definitely, or this one definitely. So albums that I felt like I should at least give an honorable mention to, that didn't make my top 10 favorite of all time. So these would be, if I was gonna do, a top 10 favorite albums of, say, like either right now or maybe in a little bit from now, could be a couple days from now. That kind of top 10 list would always change. But like I said, I went through my albums, went through my library, and just pulled like the ones that came to mind first, as far as like my favorites. I have a lot of favorite albums, so this is just a selection of my favorites. Um, so I think, now that I've talked a little bit about that, um, I will mention that the other stream that I did on the top 10 favorite albums of all time, those were albums that I kind of grew up with, from childhood, and were introduced to from time to time. So a lot of those albums, have stuck with me for the better part of, 30 plus years, maybe even longer than that. The ones that I'm going to talk about now, some of them are recent favorites. Some of them have been favorites for years. Um, so there's a little bit of everything in here as far as like what my musical tastes are. I know I mentioned a little bit about that on the second episode of All About Me, where I talk about, my musical interests and things like that. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these. So, like I said, I went through alphabetically, so I'm going to do these in alphabetical order. I kind of went through and pulled, um, like I said, the ones that came to mind first, and I'll probably, if they come to mind, any of the other albums by a particular artist or band that I already own. So, we'll start off at the very beginning with Aha, Aha. Hunting High and Low, their debut album. Obviously, this has the big, big, big hit "Take on Me," and I get in the U.S. they would kind of be classified as a one-hit wonder because it's the only song that people know from them. But a lot of people forget that "The Sun Always Shines on TV" was a minor, minor hit here. But over in the UK, they've had way more hits than that. But I would say, if you're not a fan of "Take on Me," um, I would explore the rest of this album before making a judgment on the band as a whole. Because I feel like Take On Me is like just one little facet of, one little glimpse as to what this band is about. Um, so I definitely recommend this album. So Hunting High and Low. And along with that, we'll go with, I do have the second album, Scoundrel Days. I'll also mention the third album, Stay on These Roads. That title track is brilliant. Absolutely love it. Um, yeah, this is a great, if you're really into synth, anything synth related, definitely check this one. Check both of these albums out. But if you're not a fan of Take On Me, maybe check this album out. I would say, um, other than a few exceptions to the rule, like there's some bands that I absolutely can't stand. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. But if you want to get into a band but you're tired of hearing the hits, maybe explore one of the other albums, or maybe explore the rest of that album and see if you can get past the hit. The other thing is, if you listen to that particular hit song in the context of the album, it kind of sounds like a different song. Um, so yeah, like I said, so Hunting High and Low and Stay on These Roads. Scoundrel Days is great too. Um, Here we go. How about a little bit of sophisticated pop or sophistopop? So pop mixed with some fusion, mixed with some jazz. Basha's Time and Tide. Um, Amazing musicianship on this album, and she's got such a great voice. I find her voice really easy to listen to, and um, the standouts on me for this one is From Now On, Time and Tide, the title track. New Day for You has an amazing, at least in my opinion, an amazing keyboard solo. Um, so I definitely recommend this album. So Basha's Time and Tide album. Um, I mentioned Boston in the last video in the top 10. That third stage was like the top for me, but I can't not mention the debut album, the classic album of Jack. That Basha album is so good. Give it a listen and then come back and let me know what you think of that. It's really good. Um, Debut album from Boston. I can honestly say that I have heard every single one of these songs on classic rock radio. Um, More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Foreplay into Long Time. Um, Foreplay was still like, as soon as I heard that on this album, again, my mind was blown. Sweet sounds swirling through my mind. Yeah, yeah, really. But great album. I can't say any more about it than what's already been said. All kind. What other state? But anyway, Boston's debut. I will say, much as I love the debut, I love this one as well. The second album, Don't Look Back. Um, we're getting there. I promise you, we will get to Chicago. Second album, Don't Look Back. I've in more recent times, especially the last few years, have been going to this album a little bit more than the debut, because I hear less of these songs on classic rock radio. I think I've heard the title track, I've heard Feeling Satisfied, and I probably have heard Party at one point, but I'm not too sure. But I still love this album. I see it as a continuation of the debut. Um, I do know that Tom Schultz is like the big guy in this band, really the only original member left. Um, Felt like this album was too short and it wasn't done, and the record label rushed to get it out, which led to a big fight with the label, which led to an 8-year gap between this one and Third Stage. And unfortunately, I feel like that's a bad band decision, because honestly, if they could have gone and did something in 80 or 81, they could have been on the road to being one of the biggest bands on the planet. Um, but anyway, yeah, I love the first 3 Boston albums. All right, I mentioned the Cars debut. I mentioned this album, Heartbeat City. Um, I love this album. I've loved it when I was a kid, because it was, I think, at the time I had 4 different Cars albums. I had the first 2, Debut, Candio, and then Panorama was so different. I only recently listened to it, maybe last week. It's growing on. That one's growing on me. The only big hit off of that was maybe Touch and Go, but it's so experimental and so out there. They kind of come back a little bit with Shake It Up, but then they get to this, and this really takes, synth, new wave 80s, pop production, and really polishes it. Yeah, I love this album. Hello Again, probably my favorite track on the album. I also really like Looking for Love. I love the whole album, to be honest with you. Magic, Drive. I never get tired of that song. Such a beautiful ballad, beautifully sung by the late great Benjamin Orr. Um, yeah, I love this album. All right, you mentioned Chicago. Um, so I'll talk a little bit about my history with this band. I'll show you Chicago 17. That was the last album with Peter Cetera before he left and was replaced by Jerry Sheff, who was Elvis's bass player, his son Jason Sheff, for Chicago 18. Um, and Greatest Hits 82 to 89. This was my introduction to Chicago. My aunt on my mom's side, who gave me a big like apple crate full of albums. We were listening to this one constantly on CD when I was a kid. I um, wasn't sure at first, but then as soon as I heard like "You're the Inspiration" and "Hard Habit to Break," um, I fell in love immediately. And actually, even on "Look Away" and "Stay the Night," like I had heard all those songs before. When I was living with Dad, probably like 4 or 5, but I had no idea who the band was. But then I hear them again, and it's like, oh, you know what? I really like this stuff. Now, here's the thing with Chicago. You have two main eras of the band. You have the 70s Terry Kath era, where you had Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is, 25 or 6 to 4, Beginnings, Make Me Smile, Color My World, Wishing You Were Here, Feeling Stronger Every Day. As much as I love that stuff, I didn't get into that until much, much later. This was where I came in. And Chicago fans can be very polarizing. Like, oh, I like the 70s stuff. Oh, I like the 80s stuff. Me, I like all of it. Up until a point. I liked a couple of things off of 21, but then anything after that, I don't know. Just was missing something. But I will say a band like Chicago, and there are many other bands. One I'll be talking about much, much later. Um, but there are many bands that have polarizing fan bases. Like, oh, I like this era, I like that era. I guess it depends on when you first got into them, when you came in, as far as you know what they were putting out at the time, and then you go back and you listen to their back catalog or whatever. REO Speedwagon was like that for me. I came in at High Infidelity, and I love all their 80s stuff, but then you go back and you listen to their 70s stuff, it's a completely different band. It's more like, it's definitely more, early rock and roll kind of vibes, a little bit of boogie woogie in some of their stuff, some REO Speedwagon's earlier stuff. But then you get to you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish, with hits like "Roll with the Changes" and "Time for Me to Fly." That's where you kind of see the transition into the big, pop rock band, AOR band that they would become in the early '80s. It was kind of the same thing with Chicago. Chicago had kind of two different phases of their career. Like, they were kind of getting some attention with their first few albums. Their first 3 albums were double albums, and that was unheard of at the time. You had Chicago Transit Authority, which was the original name of the band, and then the second album, which is the self-titled Chicago, I call it Chicago 2, and then the third album. Those were all, what other band released 3 double albums as their first 3 studio albums, and then a quadruple live album as their 4th album, is Chicago at Carnegie Hall, which I also have. I can't think of any other band that's done that. So, but as soon as Terry Kath passes on, you've got a run of albums that really didn't do a whole lot. 3 in particular. So he dies of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, I think after Chicago 11 came out. Then you get an album called Hot Streets, which is their first album with an actual title other than a number. And it's got them on the cover, so, oh wait, is this a different Chicago? That barely did anything here. I think Alive Again was a big hit, was kind of a hit. But then 13 didn't do anything. 14 didn't do anything. They put out another Greatest Hits as the 15th album. And then Chicago 16 comes along. They have a new record label. They have a new producer in David Foster. And they're putting out, they start cranking out, the ballads like Hard to Say I'm Sorry and Love Me Tomorrow. That basically gave them a second wind in their career. And then you get to Chicago 17, which was the last album with Peter Cetera, which is this album. This sold even more than 16 did. So this had Stay the Night was a hit, Hard Habit to Break was a hit, You're the Inspiration was a big hit. So those three alone really kind of propelled this album. And then Cetera leaves the band. He wants to put out a solo album, but Chicago wants to keep, striking while the iron is hot. So he ends up leaving the band. And then you get, after that, Chicago 18, which is the first album with Jason Scheff. Really a minor hit in If She Would Have Been Faithful, and then a completely redone version of 25 or 6 to 4. And then the bigger hit off of this album was a song called Will You Still Love Me, which, I really, I enjoy it. I like this album a lot. I really do. Again, everyone's different. You can't like everything. Everybody likes what they like, and that's, that's totally fine. Well, it's the 11th studio album, but it was the 13th overall because 4 was live at Carnegie Hall. That would have counted as the 4th album. So we're counting compilations. We're counting compilations and live albums. So you had Chicago Transit Authority as 1, the self-titled Chicago as 2, Chicago 3, and then Carnegie Hall would have been, if you were going to put it in a Roman numeral, that would have been 4. 9 would have been Chicago's Greatest Hits. It was actually subtitled. It was called Chicago 9. 12 would be Hot Streets, and that's the first and probably only album. Maybe there's one other one that didn't have a Roman numeral in its title. It just had a regular title. And then you had Chicago 13. So they're numbering them, including compilations and live albums. So that would be 16, even though it's their 14th album. All right, moving on. How about another guy that's recently come up on YouTube in a very, very good documentary that Drumeo just recently did called Drummer First. How about a little Phil Collins? I have Face Value. I have Hello, I Must Be Going. I really like this one. Actually, I like all the ones I'm about to show you. But No Jacket Required. And I can't believe I found this one on vinyl. But seriously, not in the greatest shape of album covers, but this is also missing a couple of tracks that the CD version has. But I love Phil Collins. I got into him probably around 90, 91, and I was listening to this album quite a bit over at my aunt's house on my mom's side. She had a lot of them. She had that one and Hello, I Must Be Going on CD. But I love it. You know what? Love the pop stuff or hate the pop stuff. There's really no denying that he knew how to write a pop song, and he did it well. Like, I would say my favorite tunes right now, my favorite tune is I Don't Care Anymore off of the second album. But I love, obviously, In the Air Tonight. I love off of No Jacket Required. I love Don't Lose My Number and Who Said I Would. I also love Take Me Home. Great tune. Off of this one, I love Hanging Long Enough. I love Another Day in Paradise. I love I Wish It Would Rain Down. Those are some of my favorites. Oh, that's funny. I don't think we'll be going to Grateful Dead here, but how about some more? How about some West Coast stuff? Debut album from Christopher Cross. Come on. Gotta ride like the wind, ride like the wind. I love this album. First of all, it's beautifully recorded, produced by Michael Omartian, who's also a brilliant piano player. He's done a lot of session stuff. Did a piano track on another artist's album, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. Also did some stuff with some Christian bands. Most notably, he wrote a tune called "One More Song for You" for a Christian band called the Imperials, which is one of my favorite songs of theirs. But yeah, I love this album. It's recorded beautifully. The songs are great. Yeah, I love this album. All right, I'm gonna go off the beaten path a little bit, and how about Dire Straits' "Brothers in Arms"? Huge fan of Mark Knopfler's guitar playing. Fingerstyle guitar. I've always loved fingerstyle guitar, acoustic, electric, whatever. I've really only gotten more into it, I would say, in the past like 15 years. But I love this album. It's an all digital recording. Probably one of the earliest. I wouldn't say the earliest ones, but it's a you're talking mid 80s, 84, 85, whenever this came out, probably 84. I could be very, very wrong on that because I can't read the print on the back of this album. Sultans of Swing was on the first album. That's honestly, I love the albums that I have. I've got the debut, I've got Making Movies, which I consider an underrated album. I've got Love Over Gold, and then I've got this one. So I'm missing two of them. I'm missing Communique, which was their second album, and I'm missing On Every Street, which was their final album. So I'm hoping someday, at some point, I'm going to get those two as well. But I also like the keyboard. I love the keyboard work on here. Yeah, Guy Fletcher, great keyboard player. All right, now I'm going to switch gears even more with a band that I just recently saw, a couple months ago, I think? About a month and a half ago? We're going to go into progressive metal territory with some Dream Theater. This is their 9th album, Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Bought it on vinyl when it came out. This is another polarizing, I don't get the whole, progressive metal. I feel like they're overplaying a lot. Well, I thought that at first until you kind of have to pick the right album from these guys to come in. And I don't know if I would recommend this one. I don't know if I would recommend this one, Distance Over Time, even though I got to see them on this tour, which was the first time I got to see them. As great as that was, they were even better, about a month and a half ago. That tour was great. If I was going to recommend anybody to get into Dream Theater, there's two albums that I would go to. The first one I would go to would be this one here, which is Images and Words, their second album, but it was really the one that kind of broke them somewhat into the mainstream. This had the only hit that they ever had as a career in Pull Me Under, which was a surprise hit. And then they ended up making, at the last minute, they ended up making it was a super low budget video, but it was something. The label said, we gotta have something. So I recommend that one, but I also recommend Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, which was their first concept album, and which was a huge success. At this point, it was do or die for the band. If this would have failed either critically or commercially, they probably would have called it quits. This came as a result of the previous album, which was kind of almost directed by the label, because the label were desperately waiting for them to come up with another Pull Me Under, and that's not the band that kind of does that thing. They've always done what they wanted to do. Um, so, and there was kind of internal friction with the band at the time where you had some guys wanted to try it the label's way, a couple guys wanted to stick to the 12-minute songs or whatever. And it got to the point where, okay, the label's got to stay out of our music if this band is going to stay together. So they ended up, the label ended up agreeing to that ultimatum. They put this album out, and that kind of gave them, this was kind of their second wind. Not so much in the way that Chicago 16 and all those, all the David Foster era Chicago stuff was their second wind. I think this was the thing they needed to get back back on track. I'll have to look into that. It's probably why it sounds so good. Who would have thought early digital recording would sound so good? But then listen to Flim and the BBs. Well, their first album was the very first, if not, one of the first digital recordings. It was a 3M system, but it was dismantled after the album was done. So that album will never get reissued in any format. So the only way to get it would be to either stream it on YouTube or find an original copy on vinyl. Good luck with that. All right, how about some more California rock? A lot of people would call this band country rock. Maybe their early stuff, but not so much their later stuff. I'm going to talk about the Eagles. Their greatest hits album, which is like the best-selling album here in the U.S. Worldwide, it's still Thriller by Michael Jackson, but I'm pretty sure this is a close second to that. I don't even know if it is a close second to that, but here in the U.S., it's like, best-selling album of all time. Not the first album I've ever heard from the Eagles. That would be this one, Hotel California. Heard it on 8-track. I want to say I was 4. Dad had an 8-track player with a stack of 8-tracks. He had this, he had REO Speedwagon, he had Bruce Springsteen, he had Creedence Clearwater Revival. I couldn't care about Bruce Springsteen, I couldn't care about Creedence Clearwater Revival. It was either this or REO Speedwagon, but mostly this. Because I knew Life in the Fast Lane, I knew New Kid in Town at the time. And like I said, this was before I even heard the Greatest Hits album. So really, this was the first Eagles album I ever heard. And, very, very special album to me. And then that's a close second to my favorite Eagles album, which is this one, The Long Run. This was made right after Randy Meisner left the band and was replaced by Timothy B. Schmidt. And ironically enough, Timothy B. Schmidt also replaced Randy Meisner in a band called Poco. So, Randy Meisner leaves Poco. Poco gets Timothy B. Schmidt. Randy Meisner joins the Eagles. Leaves the band after reluctantly, I guess the story goes, he didn't want to sing his big hit, which was Take It to the Limit, because he got really nervous. And then he got in a big fight with, I think it was Glenn Frey at the time, or maybe, or Don Henley was one of them. But he leaves the band, and who do they get to replace him? The same guy that replaced him in Poco, Timothy B. Schmidt. And you can tell that they were not in the greatest of places by even just the artwork alone, and even the photo on the inside of the on the album. They weren't in the greatest of places. I'll answer that question in a second, but I love, I can't tell you why. What a gorgeous vocal from Timothy B. Schmidt. My favorite track on here is probably Those Shoes. I love the groove. I love the, talk box guitars on it. It's such a cool sounding tune. Also really like the Sad Cafe. Before I go any further, let's address this question. How did you learn so much about these bands? Honestly, it's quite simple. I grew up listening to classic rock radio with my mom and my stepdad. I moved in with them when I was probably 6. And anytime a song would come on, my stepdad would go, you know who this is? Oh, this is Van Halen, or this is the Doors, or this is Jimi Hendrix, or Led Zeppelin, or Eagles, or Boz Scaggs, or whoever. And then I did the same thing with dad because dad would always listen to soft rock, 70s and 80s kind of stuff. Like he liked Chicago, he liked REO Speedwagon. Um, it just kind of grew from there, but my mom had a stack of albums that she gave me when I was 6 or 7, and there was a bunch of '70s stuff in there. Like there was Styx, Grand Illusion was in there, ELO, the two ELO albums that I mentioned in the last stream, a couple of Steve Miller Band albums, which I should have pulled, but I didn't. You know what? I'm gonna go pull them now, and I'll stick them in here. The only reason I'm doing that is because I like those albums too. Oh, where are they? There's one of them, and I think that's the other one. All right. Anyway, what else? She had a couple Eagles albums, The Long Run and the second album, Desperado. She had the two Cars albums that I mentioned in the other stream, the debut and Candio. She had Minute by Minute by the Doobie Brothers. There was a good chunk of stuff in there. Stuff that I had, that I liked. A couple Supertramp albums, one of which I'll get to in a minute. Mm, yeah, so it really kind of grew from there. And as I would hear stuff on the radio, or we would go to Goodwill. Either I needed to, I think it was like school clothes or whatever. I know they needed to get a couple things, but that's usually where I did my clothes shopping at the time, was Goodwill. But I would always be allowed to pick out an album or two. Um, and I remember early on, I had known about Queen. I had known about I think Queen the Game was like one of the first albums I picked out because I knew the name. And maybe one song. I think it was like We Are the Champions or something. Um, but my taste kind of grew from there, and then you start listening to and discovering all these other bands, more mainstream bands. Oh, she had Bob Seger too. Like she's a huge Bob Seger fan, still is. And you know what? I wasn't maybe 20 years ago. I liked a couple of tunes, but I've really grown to love his songwriting and his storytelling. Um, I love all that stuff. And then later on, I got another stack of albums from my aunt on my mom's side of the family when I was in like 8th grade. I got about a crate and a half full of things, and that had all kinds of different stuff in there. Some of which I'm gonna bring up in a little bit, but Asia's debut album was in there. Couple other albums that I'm gonna mention. The Toto album was in there. Toto 4 also had the debut. Also had the seventh one. So it really started when I was really really young, and then I know as I was growing up, I would start getting into more and more things, as I would hear them, or I would hear, either my parents or my relatives kind of talk about them, or I would hear something on either classic rock radio or the soft rock station, like, ooh, what is that? Like, and then I discover later, some of the songs that I heard when I was a kid, I didn't discover who the artist was until when I was out of high school or even 10 years ago. Like, oh, that's that song. Okay, I need to go out and get the album. So I did, and that's how I wound up with all this stuff behind me. All right, anyway, speaking of Electric Light Orchestra, how about a New World record? Um, this one has really grown on me in the past 10 years, because I'd not had the time to, at the time that I was getting all this stuff, I was still a full time musician playing in a in a cover band or whatever. it's like I didn't have time to just sit down and digest what was going on. But um, this is definitely one of my favorite ELO albums, along with one of the albums that was in my mom's original stack, Out of the Blue. With that beautiful album cover. And you spread it across the back, and you get that, and then you get the nice inside photo. Glare from my desk lamp not included. Again, like I said in the last stream, this is why I love vinyl. I love the artwork, and I love the packaging. And then this came with a poster of all the guys in the band, and it came with the cardboard UFO spaceship that you could build. Super super cool album. I love that album. All right. I do like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I got a couple of their albums, but I decided not to pull. I've got the debut, and I've got Trilogy, and I've got Pictures at an Exhibition. I've got Welcome Back My Friends, the live album. I decided to pull this one out. This was a one-off with, instead of Carl Palmer, they get Cozy Powell, because at the time Carl Palmer was in Asia. Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're referring to the I think I had one of those at some point. You're referring to the ELO album. Yeah, exactly. It was actually modeled after the Wurlitzer jukebox, if you think about it. But as soon as I heard this album, I was probably in third or fourth grade. My grandfather was big into going to yard sales, and he brought home a couple of cassettes for me. He brought this one home, and I think a copied recording of Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever, which I like. I like that album. I like Tom Petty quite a bit. But anyway, yeah, I love this album. The score, great big brass sound from, I think, a Yamaha GX1. I think was what he was playing at the time. Touch and Go was the big, hit off of this album, but I like this album a lot. But like I said, it would not have been Emerson, Lake and Palmer because they couldn't get Carl Palmer. He was in Asia at the time, so they bring in Cozy Powell. I think there was going to be a second Emerson, Lake and Powell album, but that never happened. Yeah, agreed. I had this, like I said, I had this on cassette at the time. If you try putting this album, put that artwork on a cassette, it's not even going to come close. Like, no way. Not at all. And to an extent, the same thing with CDs. You miss all that packaging and all the other cool stuff that can come with vinyl, like, posters or other cool things, All right. Let's keep going. How about some more AOR stuff? How about Foreigner 4? First album I ever heard from Foreigner. Again, another slightly polarizing band where there are those that like the debut up through Head Games. I love that stuff too. This is where I came in, to Foreigner, was this album. I don't. I'll need to find a copy of it at some point when my income allows me to actually do some vinyl shopping again. I've been told I should get into that album, but I just haven't had the time. It's one of those albums that I kind of have to sit down and digest, like, what's going on. But anyway, this is where I came in with Foreigner. Like I said, I love the first three albums, but I like the later stuff up until Inside Information. Anything after that doesn't do a whole lot for me. Yeah, very synthy album. I love the synth work on this album, especially in Urgent and in mainly in Urgent. But I'm gonna go even more synthy than that and go to The follow-up, Agent Provocateur. This has the embossing on the cover. Again, another packaging thing that you don't get with cassettes. Um, this one's definitely synthy, especially when you get to That Was Yesterday and I Want to Know What Love Is. Obviously, the big hit off of that album. I would say That Was Yesterday was kind of a minor hit because I have heard that recently on classic rock radio, on soft rock or whatever. But then you also have A Love in Vain. But then you've got the harder rock and stuff like Tooth and Nail, Stranger in My Own House, Reaction to Action. So very, very good album. I like that one a lot. Okay, a later discovery for me. I really didn't appreciate until probably about, I want to say, 10 years ago. And it's kind of sacrilege when you talk about Peter Gabriel. I probably should have been into him earlier, but I don't know what turned me off from it. Might have been hearing Steam from the Us album, but not really exploring, the rest of it. But I think I got the Growing Up Live DVD because I had heard about the stage show being like as spectacular as it is. But anyway, so I have everything except Us as far as like his studio albums, and I'm not talking about the covers albums. I'm not talking about reimagining albums like New Blood, and I think there was one other one. I don't have OVO, although I do want to get the Record Store Day release of that. That would be really cool to have. I do have Passion. So as far as like his main studio albums, the only one I'm missing is Us. So I have the first four self-titled. Melt. Love this album. Intruder, Games Without Frontiers, Biko. Great album. And then Security. Amazing Fairlight work on this album. Especially you'll hear it in The Rhythm of the Heat, like right from the beginning. What a great album opener. Yeah, really like this album. I want to say, after watching the Growing Up DVD, the first album I heard was this one. If you're wondering what the name of this album is, just turn it right around. Kind of his backlash from the record company wanting him to start naming his albums. Because I read in an interview that he wanted his albums to be identified by the artwork, kind of like a magazine. Which is why the first four are called are often called Car, Scratch, Melt, and Security. And then you've got albums that have, two-letter words to them. So, Us, Up, and then, oh man, Sean, it's so good. I had something happen in 2018 where I was living with a guy for like 2 weeks and all my DVDs got stolen, and I was not happy. Luckily, I got some restitution from that, but if I ever was going to buy that one again, if I had the opportunity, I'd get it again. It's so good. Huh. So like I said, 2-word album titles, So, Us, Up, and then you get I.O. This is the Dark Side mix. I love this album. It's so good. It just sounds incredible. All right, moving on. And if you're talking about Genesis, I do have some Genesis in there. I just haven't pulled anything out yet. I've got a couple things from the Gabriel era, and I got quite a few things from the Phil Collins era. I like it all, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people don't like the pop era of Genesis, but I love that stuff. It's done well, at least in my opinion, except for one song, Anybody know what that one song is? It's not Invisible Touch. It's a song called I Can't Dance. I liked it back in the day because I'd never heard it before, but I don't know. It's like one of those novelty songs. But anyway, moving on. How about some Bruce Hornsby? I've got The Way It Is. Actually, I got his first three here. Scenes from the South Side features a version of Jacob's Ladder, which was originally written by Bruce for another guy that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Really good album. And A Night on the Town. Believe Pat Metheny is on here, and also I think Jerry Garcia, believe it or not, is on a couple of tracks on this album. No, Pat Metheny was on Hot House. What am I thinking? Yeah, I love me some Bruce Hornsby. So good. I've talked about Elton John being a hero of mine. Growing up, but I can't talk about Elton John without talking about the other piano guy. Hey, what's up? Just reading the chat. Turnstiles. I do have the big one though. I do have The Stranger. Actually, I got everything except for River of Dreams. I don't think I need to own that one. But Turnstiles, probably, it can go anywhere in my top 5 Billy Joel albums. Those can all change like from day to day. But love this album. Say Goodbye to Hollywood. Summer Highland Falls is one of his great like deep album tracks. He's done it live a few times. New York State of Mind is on here. Prelude and Angry Young Man was the thing that really made me want to get this album. It's also got Miami 2017, Seen the Lights Go Down on Broadway, or Seen the Lights Go Out on Broadway. Another big, popular album cut of his. But then you've got to have... Oh yeah, I forgot about that. He did a lot of stuff with, and I'll be talking about Pat in a little bit too. Got to have The Stranger. The first Billy Joel album I ever heard. Absolutely love this album. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant or Vienna. Either one of those two songs could be my favorite track on this album. And then a very recent reappreciation. Recent, I mean 3 or 4 months ago, for An Innocent Man. This was his tribute to all the artists that he grew up listening to, like stuff from like the 50s and the 60s. So it sounds like it could have been, the arrangements could have been done in the 50s and 60s. But this has, obviously it's got the 3 big hits on it. Uptown Girl, which I know a lot of people don't like that song. I don't care. I love it, and they're wrong. I love Uptown Girl. So good. The Longest Time, I love that one. Tell Her About It, I love that song. Leave a Tender Moment Alone was another hit. Love that one. Keeping the Faith, love that one. I love this whole album. I don't care. I love this whole album. Oh, so good. Getting back to Elton. Here's that live album I mentioned in the last stream. Here and There. This is the shortened album. I do have... I think in there I have an import of this called London and New York. I got a couple of imports of this album in there that were given to me by the owner of that record store that I got the ELO's Face the Music from. But this was on constant rotation back when I was like about 6 or 7. Constant. It's so good. The live version of Honky Cat, and not one of my favorite songs, but the live version on here is quite good. The live version of Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding. But here's the thing, it's missing a lot of stuff. If you can get the expanded version on CD, it's got a longer set for each of these concerts. So one side one is from the Royal from a gig at the Royal Festival Hall, and the side two is from New York at Madison Square Garden. This would have been the show that John Lennon appeared at and did some tunes with him. That and those tunes are on the expanded version of this album, and I believe it was a promise that if Elton played on, I think it was Whatever Gets You Through the Night. I think it was the track that he played on. I think he made John Lennon promise to appear at Madison Square Garden if Whatever Gets You Through the Night became a hit, which it did. So there you go, John Lennon appearing at Madison Square Garden in I think one of his final, concert appearances, if not his final. But don't quote me on that. All right. Another sleeper favorite of mine, Blue Moves. A lot of people would consider there to be quite a bit of filler on this album. I don't quite think so. Maybe there's a track or two that's not quite my favorite, but I don't think it's bloated in any way. And I think, 1976, I think was a good time for him to put out, another double, a double album. Hey, electronic composer, what's up? So he did a double album in '73 in Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Now you got to remember before that he was releasing one album a year, sometimes two a year, like especially early on. So he was a very prolific writer. He and Bernie back in from like '69, even earlier than that, because they were staff writers, writing for other people. But up until '76, and this would have been the last album before he completely gets rid of his band. He splits with Bernie Taupin for a while. And then he doesn't put out another album until probably '77, '78, with an album called A Single Man, where he works with a different lyricist. But I like this album quite a bit. I really do. Tonight is a big one for me. I love the orchestration on that. One Horse Town is great, very proggy. Um, Cage the Songbird is great. This has got Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word, one of my favorite Elton hits. So good. Where's the sure? Yeah. Oh yeah, that's first song on side four. Yep, great album. Yep, such a good album. I got to number two, and I feel like it's one of those albums that doesn't get talked about as much as it should, as I think it should at least. The other album with this lineup was Rock of the Westies, and I almost pulled that one too. Um, but I love that album too. That's got some pretty proggy stuff on it too, like the medley. What is it? Yell Help, Wednesday Night and Ugly, and then Street Kids, Feed Me, and then Billy Bones and the White Bird. That's such a good album. The other album I pulled out was Too Low for Zero. So this was the album that reunited him with Bernie Taupin full time, and it kind of gave him a second wind in his career. Um, and it also reunited him with the classic Elton John band lineup of Dee Murray on bass, Davy Johnston on guitar, and then the great Nigel Olsson on drums. And then he puts this album out. It's got I'm Still Standing. A lot of people hate that song. I like it. Not one of my favorites, but I like the song. There's a lot of Yamaha CS80 on here as well. So for those synth nerds out there. You'll definitely hear it on Too Low for Zero and on a song called Crystal, and you'll hear it on Saint as well on those three tracks. Nice. Yeah, he puts on a good show. Well, I would say he used to put on a great show until he retired. Mm. All right, another band I talked about in the other stream, Journey. Second album with Steve Perry, Evolution. This was actually the first Journey album I heard, but I didn't know who. No, I did know who the band was. My dad told me who the band was. Um, I know at the time, Majestic, Too Late, and Love and Touch and Squeezing. But I actually got into this album before I got into Infinity. But as soon as I got more into Infinity, that became like my favorite Journey album. But this is very, very close. There's like four Journey albums that could easily rotate as my favorite Journey album. This one, Infinity. The next one I'm about to show you, which is Departure and Escape. Look at that artwork. Once again, an example of artwork that does not belong on a cassette. Like, look at that. Like, that detail is just, oof, so good. Color might not be great, but I hate this camera anyway. But this has the classic Any Way You Want It on it. Someday Soon is probably one of my favorite tracks, but I also really like People and Places, where you get a rare Neil Schon lead vocal. You've got the fiery, pretty rocking Line of Fire on here. And then you've got Good Morning Girl into Stay a While. Stay a While is great too. That almost could be Lights Part 2. Because it kind of has that vibe to it. All right. How about some American prog? We're about halfway through the pile that I've got here. How about some American prog rock? How about Song for America by Kansas? Absolutely love the title track. Such a good album. Often quite gets overshadowed by the next two I'm about to bring up. The iconic Left Overture, which obviously has Carry On Wayward Son, but Miracles Out of Nowhere, Cheyenne Anthem, and Magnum Opus, those three could rotate as my favorite tune on the album, but I really also like The Wall on this particular album. And then Point of No Return, which obviously has Dust in the Wind. But I like this whole album too, especially the title track is such a good album. Such a good tune. Oh, that was cool. That must have been really good to hear Steve Walsh, in form. All right. I talked about them in the last stream too. My number 10 favorite album of all time was Sports. Here's Picture This. So I do have the debut album, like I said in the last stream. It's not quite getting to what they would sound like on this album. It's very new wave, power pop, almost punk in a couple of places on that particular album. Not very memorable for me, but here you start getting the pop sensibility that you would get in the follow-up to this and the album after that, which I'm about to pull up, especially in a hit like Do You Believe in Love and then Working for a Living. And then you get Sports, and then you get Four, another one that I heard probably back in like third grade. I think I borrowed a cassette from it. From It was like my aunt or my uncle. One of them had on my stepdad's side had a cassette of it. But Jacob's Ladder, written by Bruce Hornsby, and then also appearing on his Harbor Lights album. No, Scenes from the South Side album. I do need to get Harbor Lights. But Stuck With You, Doing It All for My Baby, Hip to Be Square. Those were the three big hits off of this album, but I like this whole album too. Very, very good album. How about some more West Coast soft rock, but from Australia? And I'm not talking about Air Supply, even though I could have pulled Lost in Love or the Greatest Hits album out, because I love that stuff too. How How about Little River Band, Sleeper Catcher? So, Reminiscing is on here. Lady is on here. So, two big hits off of this album. But if you want to get, oh yeah, Power of Love is great too. But you want to talk really good vocal harmonies in addition with like Huey Lewis and the News, these guys. Get their greatest hits album. It's got like, It's a Long Way There. Um, great tune. But I've got, I think, everything except their second album. I need to find a copy of that. And then I'll have like kind of their um, earlier discography. But love this album. And then I pulled First Under the Wire, which has Lonesome Loser. And the other big hit on here was Cool Change. Um, Lonesome Loser is probably my favorite Little River Band song. So good. And so beautifully recorded. Like, this is a great sounding album. I think all their stuff just sounds so good. That's one of the reasons I like what people would call yacht rock, which I find kind of a derogatory term. I call it West Coast, rock, or soft. I would just call it soft rock because that's what it is. It rocks a little bit, but it's not as hard as a lot of other bands. But love this band, Little River Band. My mom is a big fan. That was another band that we used to listen to when I was growing up a lot, and it was the Greatest Hits album on repeat, along with Boston's Third Stage or Elton John's Greatest Hits Volume 3, which would have covered like the Geffen years. Um, all right. How about more? How about Kenny Loggins pre Top Gun? um, what's the hit off of this one? This Is It. Um, was the big hit off of this one, but love me some Kenny Loggins. Yeah, Lovers Rock. That's it's a Sade album. Believe it or not. I don't know why I don't have any Sade in here either. I need to fix that soon. Um, and then High Adventure. I just listened to this. I finally had time to like just pull it out, at random a couple nights ago and listen to it and throw it on. This is so good. The opening track, Don't Fight It, has Steve Perry from Journey. So he co-wrote it. He sings, co-does lead vocals on it. Amazing. Um, it's also got a couple of the guys from Toto on here. So David Page plays some light synth work on The More We Try, which is a gorgeous ballad if you're into soft rock ballads like I am. I'm a softie, what can I say? You know what? I don't care. Oh yeah, Loggins and Messina. Yep. But his early solo stuff is so good. I've got Celebrate Me Home. I've got Night Watch. I need to replace my copy of Night Watch. Keep the Fire, High Adventure, and then I've got Vox Humana, which has the big hit Forever on it. Those are like my go-to Kenny Loggins stuff. All right. Here we go. Yep, I said it. I don't care. Actually, I didn't say it. I just held it up. Richard Marx. Great vocalist, great songwriter. What more can be said? A true talent. Um, I remember hearing this album as a kid. Probably 6 or 7. I had heard songs on the radio like I've heard Endless Summer Nights and Hold On to the Night. Those two I would say mainly, but like I think I had a cousin that had this album on cassette. And I fell in love with it. It's got Don't Mean Nothing, which had a great Joe Walsh guitar solo. It had some background vocals from Timothy B. Schmidt. Also has some cool piano work at the end from Michael Omartian, who did Christopher Cross's first album. Had great guitar work from Mike Landau on here. Great album. Um, I've also got the follow up. What's the follow up called? Repeat Offender. That had some good stuff on it too. Um, all right. Sergio Mendes. This was where he wasn't really writing, he was more of like the producer. Like he was more in the producer's chair. Kind of like what Quincy Jones was with The Dude, that album. Um, Kind of a cast of characters on this album, but it's so good. There's a lot of different flavors on here. There's some of that, Brazilian, jazz kind of stuff on here. There's the pop stuff like Never Gonna Let You Go. And then Rainbow's End, which has a fantastic lead vocal from Michael Sembello's brother, Danny. And I should have pulled that Michael Sembello album out. That's really good too. Um, but another good, great cast of characters on here. But this album also contains, and I mentioned the title of it, Never Gonna Let You Go. The one, I would say, the most chord changes in any pop or key changes in any pop song that I've ever heard. There's probably like 20 something, 22 key changes in that song. And it's one of the reasons I love that song because it works so beautifully. But unfortunately, you can't get away with a pop song like that, in today's age. Kind of sad. Because I love that kind of stuff. And some great musicianship on this album. And did I mention it's just beautifully recorded? Beautifully mixed. Oh, Bruce Swedien mixed it. Um, I need to get some of the Brazil 66 stuff. 'Cause that stuff's really good too. I've got a couple more of his 80s albums too. I've got Confetti and I've got Brazil 86. Brazil 86 is way out of print, but it's got a couple more of like, of the pop tunes that he did on here. But oh yeah, Bruce Swedien mixed this one. So same guy that worked on Thriller. No wonder it sounds so good. Yeah, 22 key changes in that's an estimate, by the way. There is a cover of that tune floating around on YouTube. Um, where the band covers the song, but there's a little counter in the corner of the video that counts how many key changes there are in the song as the song is being played. Um, all right, how about some more 80s pop? Mr. Welcome to the Real World. The great Richard Page on lead vocals. Richard Page and Steve George had a band previous to this called Pages, and I highly recommend that stuff too if you can find it. I need to find those albums too. But obviously, this has Kyrie and Broken Wings were the two big hits off this album. But you also had Is It Love, which was a minor hit. But I love this whole album. Very good keyboard slash synth work on here. Really good vocals. Richard Page is one of the best vocalists in the business. Um, and then I've got the follow up to that, which is Go On. This is a more mature sounding album. Um, and this one's got Stand and Deliver, which I believe was in the movie Stand and Deliver. Healing Waters is great. Dust is great. Dust, if you listen to the intro of that, that has the famous shakuhachi sound from the Emulator 2, I believe. So that's kind of featured on here. But this is a great album. I really like it a lot. Moving on. I might catch a little flack for this, but you know what? I don't care. Because, again, you like what you like. I'm going to show the more common album cover first, and then I'll show the alternate cover. I don't know why the two different covers, because they're both U.S. issues, but Billy Ocean Suddenly. Suddenly is a gorgeous track. Great ballad. There's a good acoustic cover of it on YouTube of him doing it in recent years, probably around 2008. And I've heard him do some. I've heard some more recent videos from like maybe the late 2010s, and he still can sing. He's just got such a smooth voice. Um, this is such a good album. Um, so that's one of the covers, and then I've got the other one here. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you why the two different covers because. Um, oh yeah, he's still out touring, and he still sounds as far as I know, he still sounds as good as he did back in the day. Um, but another unmistakable voice. I love his voice. I love his vocals. Really good pop stuff too. Like I don't care how cheesy Caribbean Queen sounds. I still love that tune. Um. All right. I mentioned a little bit. I don't think I did. In the stack of albums that my aunt got me in junior high in like eighth grade was a couple of Alan Parsons Project albums. One of them was a best of, the other one was I, Robot. I didn't pull either one of those out, even though I like them. I pulled out a couple more that I like even more. Eye in the Sky. Love this album. Again, it's Alan Parsons, so it's going to be impeccably produced. Mm. Yeah, those are good. Um, that is such a good album. And then I have Stereotomy, which has the really cool packaging. Again, something you don't get on cassette. And I think I have this on. I should pull it out. I've got it on cassette, like back there somewhere. But this has the really cool packaging where um, the album cover is two different colors, but so is the envelope. So if I were to flip flop this album and put it on this side, you get a completely different cover. And now I got to put it all back together. Once again, come on, get in there. This is the hard part about it. Once again, this is packaging that you do not get on packaging that you do not get with a cassette or even a CD for that matter. That's why I will stick to vinyl. There we go. So as I pull this in, you'll see what happens because I've got the blue side of the cover. There we go. There we go. Oh God, yeah, that whole album is so good. I wouldn't want to be like you. Don't let it show. The voice off of that album, so good. Um, I didn't get into Pink Floyd until I'm going to talk about Pink Floyd here in a minute. But I pulled. I could have pulled Dark Side of the Moon. I could have pulled The Wall, but I instead pulled Wish You Were Here. As much as I like those other two, I love those other two albums, and they're classics for a reason. Um, this one is just so cool the way it bookends with Shine On You Crazy Diamond. It's almost like this album tells a story in and of itself. So, so good. Um, all right. Rush Moving Pictures. I have the entire Rush discography up until Presto back there, but I just pulled a couple of my favorites. Moving Pictures is an obvious classic. I think side two on this album is quite underrated. Um, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Pyramid's got some moments too, but also Turn of a Friendly Card is pretty proggy in some spots. Um, but yeah, their later stuff too. I love Ammonia Avenue. That's got a couple really good tracks on it. But Rush Moving Pictures, and then Grace Under Pressure. Again, another band where when you talk about bands like Chicago that have two different distinctive eras, Rush have probably three. Um, where you have the really early heavy prog stuff, almost almost borderlining on metal, and I wouldn't even go to that extreme, but you probably could in a couple of very minor cases. Um, but very, very proggy and very experimental. And then you start to see a shift on permanent waves and moving pictures to almost a more accessible sound. You kind of get, and it goes even further with signals. And then after signals, you start getting more keyboards. And then Grace Under Pressure, followed by Power Windows and Hold Your Fire, you really get keyboard heavy with Rush. Um, yeah, Signals is so good. I love that one, but I love Grace Under Pressure. I love Power Windows, and I like Hold Your Fire, but probably not as much as those other ones. And Signals, obviously, so good. Um, but on this one, I love just an early warning. The Enemy Within. Between the Wheels is probably my favorite tune off of this album. So good. All right, back to the West Coast for a little Boz Scaggs. Silk Degrees. What many consider and what the guys will tell you in the band, the birth of the band Toto on this album. Uh, Virtual Persona, how you doing? Take a drink here. All right, the birth of Toto, because David Page wrote or co-wrote a lot of the tunes on this album, like Lowdown and Lido Shuffle. You definitely hear Toto influence on this album. Um, like I said, I think if I am remembering right, Lukather's on here. Jeff Porcaro is on here. David Page is on here. Um, a lot of the guys. David Hungate's on here. Oh no, Lukather's not on this album. David Page, Jeff Porcaro, and David Hungate. So you've got three of the six members from Toto on this album. Um, so good. Oh, Lowdown is so good. I love that tune. Lido Shuffle. Um, Also really really good. I pulled Other Roads too. This was a recent purchase. Um, I think the hit off of this was Heart of Mine, written by the late great Bobby Caldwell, who himself had a hit with What You Won't Do for Love. Um, so if you really want to talk like Blue Eyed Soul, soft rock, he was really really good. Love Bobby Caldwell. So yeah, this is a great album. Um, uh, like I said, Heart of Mine is great. Crimes of Passion. The opening, What's Number One, really really good. Um, I get quite a few Boz Scaggs albums. I'm a fan. I've got that. I've got Down to Then Left. I've got. So I need to get Middleman. I definitely that's a discography that especially for like the 70s and 80s stuff I really want to round out. Um, Paul Simon's still crazy after all these years. Um, Obviously we have 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover on here, but the title track is great. My Little Town is great. Silent Eyes. Love this album. This has also got some slight embossing over here. Again, something you don't get on cassette. I also pulled Hearts and Bones. I really like the title track on this one. Um, Great songwriter, but also I think an underrated guitarist too. Especially like the way he plays on Hearts and Bones. So good. I've also got One Trick Pony. Oh, I've got There Goes Rhyme and Simon. I have quite a few Paul Simon albums. Um, all right, how about some 70s art rock, pop, prog, whatever you want to call them? Um, Supertramp's Crime of the Century. Um, yeah, it is underrated. Crime of the Century. I remember first hearing this one and hearing Dreamer. Was it Dreamer? No, you know what it was? I know where I heard that song. Um, Went to a yard sale when I was 6, and the a lady that was running this yard sale, I asked if they had any records, and they gave me a whole box of 45s. I don't think they even charged us for it. I was living with my mom and my stepdad at the time. They didn't even charge us for it, but I knew the name Supertramp because my mom had the next album I'm going to talk about. Um, and I love that album. So I had a 45 of Dreamer and From Now On, but they were the live versions from the Paris album. So I loved Dreamer. So as soon as I heard this album, saw that it was on it, I was like, okay, I need to get that album for myself. But so good. Another beautifully recorded album. From there, we can pull out even in the quietest moments, where the big hit is give it a little bit, but another great one. Yeah, Rudy is so good. But so Crime of the Century is a very close number two to my favorite Supertramp album, and that is the very first one I ever heard, which is Breakfast in America, which includes my all-time favorite Supertramp song, which is Take the Long Way Home. I remember that being the very first song I ever heard, and look at that artwork. It's like New York City, but it's all breakfast stuff. Brilliant. Brilliant. Mm. Yeah, no, I agree, but it sounded so good. Um, that's one of the reasons I like that I got into using some Wurlitzer stuff, and I need to pull that sound out a little more, just to see what else I can come up with that particular tune. Um, but I can tell you, anytime I did a keyboard demo, I worked at a music store about 20 years ago, and anytime I would do a keyboard demo, um, and would pull out a Wurlitzer sound, I would always either play the riff from Dreamer or I would play the what is it? Goodbye Stranger, probably. I think was the other tune I played. Um, but yeah, this is such a good album. Gone Hollywood, the opener, great track. You've got the Logical song. Breakfast in America could probably be like my second or third favorite Supertramp tune. Goodbye Strangers on here. Lord Is It Mine? Just Another Nervous Wreck. So good. Um, I do. I actually mentioned I have Trilogy, I have Pictures at an Exhibition, and I have oh, Trilogy, Pictures at an Exhibition, Brain Salad Surgery, and the live album, the triple live album, Welcome Back, My Friends. But I've also got this one that I showed earlier and that I talked about earlier, Emerson, Lake and Powell, recorded because Carl Palmer was busy doing stuff with Asia at the time. Oh, I remember what I was going to pull out. I pulled some stuff at the last minute. So before I move on to further, um, Steve Miller Band, Fly Like an Eagle. This was one of the albums my mom had in that little stack of albums that she gave me when I was 6. This one and the next one I'm going to talk about. Yeah, works. I can take it or leave it. I like the last side of it, but the other three sides are kind of like three solo albums if you think about it. I feel like they were kind of at the point where they kind of didn't want to be together because what comes out after that, Works Volume 2, and then the disaster that was Love Beach, other than the last track, Memoirs of an Officer and a Gentleman. Say that 5 times fast. But anyway, Steve Miller Band, Fly Like an Eagle. The opening synth, space intro, which is what it's called, into Fly Like an Eagle. And there's so many other great songs on here, too. Um, Serenade is probably my top, favorite Steve Miller tune. I love Serenade. It's got Dance, Dance, Dance. However, as great of an album as that is, um, I think my favorite one has got to be this one. Songs in the Key of Life. More on that later. My favorite Steve Miller album, Book of Dreams. And look at that artwork. Matter of fact, it's so good that I happen to have a picture disc of it. Come on. I pull it out, but this plastic is such a pain to deal with, and I want to replace the plastic at some point. Yep, the great one, Book of Dreams. So good. That Threshold into Jet Airliner. Threshold is probably. I remember hearing that when I was 6 and going, "What is that sound?" Um, but yeah, Jet Airliner, Wintertime, Swingtown, True Fine Love, Jungle Love. The Steak, so good. I love The Steak. That's a great tune. Um, so good. Um, just great songs. I think I've got the album Abracadabra. Um, I don't know why I bought it other than I got it for a good price and I need to listen to that album. Yeah, that album is so good. Um, I know we're like the chat is about 30 seconds behind, but oh, that's YouTube for you. All right, hour and 26. I told you this was going to be a long one. How about some more melodic slash AOR rock? Survivor, Vital Signs. Um, I have Premonition. I have Eye of the Tiger. I've got Caught in the Game. I have this one. I've got Too Hot to Sleep. If you can't tell, I'm a Survivor fan. I love this tune. I love this album. High on You, Can't Hold Back. The Search is Over. Such a good ballad from them. And Jimmy Jamison's voice. I also like Dave Bickler's voice. Um, both of those guys could sing great, and obviously Jimmy Jamison is no longer with us anymore. But what a voice that guy had. I pulled that album, and I've got When Seconds Count. Um, this has the big hit Is This Love, but I also love Man Against the World. This is such a good album. I love Survivor. Yeah, they're give and take. You kind of have to. Again, it depends on when you come in. If you're one of those guys that can't get past Eye of the Tiger, at least listen to the rest of that album. And actually, Jim Peterick, who was one of the main songwriters in that band, went on to do a bunch of other stuff. He did some stuff with an AOR band called Mecca, um, that had the late great Fergie Fredrickson, who was one of the singers from Toto. He did some stuff with them. And that band also had David Hungate on bass and the great Shannon Forrest on drums, who's on tour with Toto now. So definitely check Mecca out. It's kind of like Toto meets Survivor. So good. I love that stuff. All right, I'm gonna get soft on here. Remember when I said Paul Simon was a great songwriter and a guitarist? There's another guy like that that has, I would say back when I was a kid, I liked a couple of tunes, but I haven't grown to appreciate James Taylor until probably, I want to say 2004, 2005, like just out of high school. But his albums, if you want to talk sonic, quality and recording and arranging and things like that, his albums were chock full of it. I pulled That's Why I'm Here, because it's got my favorite James Taylor tune, which is called Only a Dream in Rio. Um, so good. I love that track. Very, very good. Um, I also pulled, oh, here we go. Another good one, Never Die Young. This has got a good, great bass line from, I can't remember if it was Lee Sklar that played on that tune, or if it was, Jimmy Johnson. I'm about to look right now. Oh, Lee Sklar's on here. And then, who plays drums? Oh, Carlos Vega plays drums on here. James was another guy like Kenny Loggins that just surrounded himself with just the best of the best studio musician. Um, oh God, you know what? He's another guitarist that doesn't get talked about enough. I've always loved his guitar work. Again, I think fingerstyle, but kind of like Paul Simon and kind of like Mark Knopfler, but so good. His songs are so good too. Um, I've got that JT album too. That's if I was gonna pick a favorite, it'd probably be either that one or Gorilla's really good. That's Why I'm Here is really good. What's the one that has Sweet Baby James? I've got that one. So good. All right, all right. How about some more Toto? Seventh one. Um, this was in the stack of albums along with Toto 4 that I talked about in the live stream that my aunt on my mom's side gave me in seventh grade. As soon as I put this on, obviously this is Pamela, but great album. The track that blew me away on here was a song called Mushanga, which is kind of like Africa Part 2. Um, oh yeah, Tony Levin's so good. But anyway, Mushanga is kind of like Africa Part 2, and the way that chorus just explodes, it's one of the kind of trademarks with them. It's just that exploding chorus, and I'm going to talk about another one of those in a second. But this is, by the way, is a sealed copy. This has original 1988 air in here. I do have another copy that I play. Um, Here's another one. Toto 14. Um, Loved it when it first came out. I'm not crazy about the production on it or the mastering on it. I think it needs a remaster. It definitely sounds like it's not as dynamic as some of their previous work, but the songs on here are killer. When you want to talk about a bombastic chorus, listen to the song Burn on this album. That would probably, if you play it at the right volume, the song starts out soft, but that chorus will take your head right off. Um, that's why I love this band so much. And they're one of those bands that, again, they're all LA, session guys. And the singer is the son of one of the great film composers of all time, John Williams. So obviously there's some pedigree in here. And it's got some amazing Steve Porcaro keyboard work on here too. And so yeah, Barn is a highlight for me. The other big highlight is Great Expectations, which has definitely is Toto at their proggiest. Even though I would say there's some elements of their second album, Hydra, that have that kind of thing. All right, how about some more synth pop kind of stuff? Ultravox Vienna, especially that title track. Um, Love Midge Yours stuff on here, but Vienna is easily my favorite Ultravox song. So good. Um, and then I pulled Lament. This has got the first Ultravox tune I ever heard, which was Dancing with Tears in My Eyes. Still a great tune, but this is a great album. I've also got, I got like what, three or four other ones. I've got Quartet. I've got a few other ones. Um, I'm gonna keep going with some of that soft rock stuff. Gino Vanelli's Nightwalker, which has the great Vinnie Colaiuta on a tune called "Stay with Me." That has got such a cool groove to it. Um, let's see who else is on here. Uh, Oh yeah, no, Vinnie Colaiuta plays on this whole thing, and then Brad Cole, who toured with Phil Collins quite a bit, is on this album too. Um, yeah, I love Ultravox, so good. Um, but definitely check this album out, and also check out an album called Brother to Brother. Can't even talk right now. Both of those are fantastic albums, and as far as I'm concerned, Gino's somebody that doesn't get talked about enough. But yeah, Nightwalker, easily one of my favorite Gino Vanelli albums. Probably my favorite. All right. How about some Steve Winwood, Arc of a Diver? Beautiful synth work on here. I believe on this album he plays everything himself. On this album, and I think Talking Back to the Night, which is the follow up of that. I think the follow up to this too, he plays everything on as well. Oh, very cool. Um, but yeah, Arc of a Diver has the Great While You See a Chance, which is a lead sound that I am still trying to chase. Um, it was a Some sources say it was a multi moog. Some sources say it was a mini moog. I'm probably gonna go with multi moog. Um, but it's that signature sound that's in that tune. It's in Valerie, and it's on the Finer Things. But it's kind of his signature, lead sound. It's almost like a saxophone in a way, the way that it's expressed. Um, but so good. So I pulled that one out, and I pulled Back in the High Life, which has our friend James Taylor on background vocals on the title track. Um, but yeah, between those two, Arc of a Diver and this one, they could easily flip flop as you think it was a micro moog, so that's interesting. It's funny, I tried Googling it and I don't think micro was mentioned. Um, I'm going to highlight this question here. It says, I always wondered why the Moog bass sound was always attributed to Moog. You can get that sound on so many synths. Probably because um, the most common of those synths would have been the Mini Moog or a Moog. Um, as you can get that sound on an ARP Odyssey, you can get it on pretty much any synth that has like two or even three oscillators, a filter with its own envelope, and then maybe some portamento. I mean, I can get a good bass sound out of an Odyssey. I can get one out of the 2600 back here. Um, yeah. Again, it depends on when you come in too. Um, I haven't heard much of the traffic stuff. I'll have to dive in at some point when I've got time to really sit down and digest what is going on. When I discover a new band, I want to be able to just sit down and digest everything that's going on and not really think about anything else. I might be working on a jigsaw puzzle at the time, at the same time, but anyway. So this album, Higher Love, which has the great Shaka Khan on backing vocals, awesome. Freedom Overspill is great. The Finer Things, which has that synth lead that we were talking about, and I love his voice. I love Stevie's voice. All right, I got a few more. Um, Somebody mentioned Songs in the Key of Life earlier. Here you go. This one also has the Something's Extra 7-inch that came with it, too. There we go. So it's got Saturn, Ebony Eyes, and then All Day Sucker, Easygoing Evening. So it's got a few other tracks on it, but yeah. How old was he when he recorded this? He was probably 20 something, probably in his 20s when he did this. I know Greg Fillinganes talked about it in an interview. Um, but man, I would say the peak of his classic period, what people would call, what we call his classic period, which started with Music of My Mind, which I still need to get that one. Um, I need to look and see which ones I have because I got quite a few Stevie albums. Yeah, this is definitely his magnum opus. I would say this is him at his finest. But that's not to say that I can't think any less of Talking Book, Intervisions, and Fulfilling This First Finale. Those three are incredible too. Um, I also want to get my hands on Hotter Than July. I do have his 80s albums. I've got In Square Circle and I've got Characters. In Square Circle is kind of spotty for me. I love Part Time Lover and I absolutely love Overjoyed, those two albums. Characters has a couple of moments on it. Um, but you can't top you can't top his 70s stuff, especially this album. So good. Um, so many great tunes on here. I can't even pick a favorite. Like this is one of those albums that I can't skip anything on. um, oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah, 26. I was close. So he was 26 when he made this. 26 when he made Songs in the Key of Life. Think about that. Does that not show what a genius he was? I can't even think of what I was doing at 26. I certainly wasn't doing this. I was probably doing Korg keyboard demos. All right, I've got one more here in the main part, and then I got a couple of things that I pulled from the jazz section that I'll talk about. Um, I do have some Yes stuff. I've got a couple of the 70s albums, really a couple of the ones that I really want to have. I have Fragile, and I think I have Close to the Edge. I know I have Yes Songs, which is the live album. Um, I've also got their 80s albums, and their 80s albums was where I came into them. I didn't discover the prog stuff until later when I saw them in 2002, and I was still blown away by it. Um, I decided to pull 90125, named after the catalog number of the album. Um, so obviously this has Owner of Lonely Heart. I had heard the song but didn't know who the band was, but but I knew I liked the song. And then I heard it was Yes. And then I don't think um I don't think I got an appreciation for this one until later on, maybe in high school. Um when I was like, okay, I need to just sit down and listen to it like in its entirety. I did. I really like this album. I would say a lot of Yes fans will favor the 70s stuff more than what we have here with Trevor Rabin, but Trevor Rabin is still a fantastic musician. Um, Great guitar player. I mean, Steve Howe is great, but for me, for my particular taste, I like Trevor a little bit more. Um, so, Honorable Lonely Heart, Hold On, great. Changes is probably my favorite tune off of this album. But then you've got Cinema, which is great. Leave It, Our Song, City of Love, Hearts. Um, Trevor Horn produced album. I'll have to check. I'll have to get my hands on that one. I do need to get Relayer. Oh, I've got Going for the One in there too. I think I have Drama as well, but that didn't have. I think that was Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs on that album, but I can't remember. But it's still that one's still a good one. All right, so that's all my main stuff that I decided to pull. I have a ton of jazz stuff, but I only pulled like a select few that kind of really stood out to me. Um, I'm going to start with this one here. Weather reports heavy weather. Um, the classic, the classic that it is. Obviously, Birdland is amazing, but I I'm a huge fan of the tune "A Remark You Made," which is the second tune on this album. Beautiful fretless work from Jocko, but a really cool, tasty synth solo from the late great Joe Zawinul. Um, so yeah, great album. Um, I pulled some more jazz fusion stuff. I did not pull any of my Kenny G stuff, even though I've talked to my uncle. I've got an uncle that's a huge fan of jazz and jazz fusion. Like he's a big fan of the Rippingtons, which I also really like. I love that kind of I love that sound. Rippingtons, Yellow Jackets, very early Kenny G, Jeff Lorber, so good. Um, I have Mr. Gone. I haven't listened to that one. I'll have to check that one out. Um, Here's another one of my favorites, and this was introduced to me. This guy was introduced to me by a bandmate of mine. Um, Let me just see here. So a bandmate of mine turned me onto this guy, Lee Ritenour. I pulled Earth Run, and I pulled I love Earth Run, so good. Um, and then I pulled Portrait. Portrait is probably my favorite one, but then you can go back to like Captain Fingers and even earlier than that. Um, oh, that must have been a killer show. Yellow Jackets, and I've got a ton of David Sanborn in here too. He's so good. But Portrait, this is also a both of these albums, I believe. Yeah, Earth Run and Portrait are both digital recordings, so they sound absolutely amazing. But I love Whitewater on here. Um, this is just such a good album. And also, Yellow Jackets are on this album. Kenny G is on this album. Um, Let's come out 87. So yeah, very good album. Um, Very good guitar playing from Mr. Ritenour. Um, Somebody mentioned Pat Metheny when we were talking about Hornsby. Oh God, yeah, if there's any jazz guy that I want to see, if I can ever get the chance to see him, I would definitely want to go see Lee Ritenour live. All right, here's a guy I did get to see live back in 2017, and it was absolutely brilliant. Pat Metheny. Um, I pulled. I've got all the original Pat Metheny group albums, so I've got the first four. So the self-titled, American Garage, Off Ramp, and First Circle. I've also got Travels. I pulled Still Life Talking, which is absolutely brilliant. Um, Last Train Home is like probably the most more popular tune on here. Um, this is just so good. Um, I love this album. Again, beautifully recorded, beautifully arranged. Um, but my personal favorite Pat Metheny group album has got to be Letter from Home. Um, oh, it says, have you heard? Which I saw them play in 2017 when I saw Pat Metheny live. I think that was like the second tune that he opened with. Um, and then the title track on this is absolutely beautiful. So good. I love this album. Um, as far as my other jazz stuff, I've got. I could name Chuck Mangioni's Children of Sanchez album. Feels So Good is also really good. I love that album. Um, Kenny G is hit and miss for me. I have his first four albums, so G Force, Gravity, Duotones, and Silhouette. Um, Oh, he did a collaborate. He did one with Bowie. I'll have to check that one out. He did an album called Beyond the Missouri Sky with Charlie Hayden, the late great Charlie Hayden, and that is brilliant. That is so good. Um, I've also got a couple of Chet Atkins ones in here from the '80s. I've got one called Stay Tuned, and I've got one called Sales. Um, I would say they're less country and a little more like smooth jazz. But those are both brilliant. Those have a bunch of the Toto guys on there too. Um, so I've got that in there. I've got some Keith Jarrett in here. I've got the Colm concert, which is absolutely brilliant. So those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But like I said, I got a ton of David Sanborn stuff in here in there as well. Um, so that is pretty much it for my favorite albums. Some of my favorite albums that I've rattled off. If I was gonna do this stream again a year from now, you'd probably hear some of these titles again, but then you'd probably hear some other. You'd probably see me pull some other ones out. Um, yeah, Pat is so good. I think I have a best of Manhattan Transfer. I'm gonna have to check that out. So now you got my wheels spinning. Um, I might have some time tomorrow night where I'm not really doing anything. Because again, if I listen to an artist for the first time, but I'll check them out. I got a little listening homework. I got to show this. Yeah, we all have some listening homework to do, me myself included. Um, Manhattan Transfer. I'll check them out definitely. Where I did see them is on. I don't know if anyone remembers the show Home Improvement from the '90s, that sitcom, but Manhattan Transfer made a guest appearance on the Christmas episode in the second season, um, where they're singing an a cappella version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which was really good but funny at the same time because Al gets stuck in the chimney on the set and Tim's trying to get him out. Absolutely hilarious. T Square, I'll have to check that out. I've got some Shadow Facts in here too that I need to check out. Um, you know what? I'll show you some of my other favorites. I'm gonna go into cassette land for a second. Um, Hang on, I gotta find it first. Here we go. Where's... Here we go. All right. All right. One last one. Oh, Yellow Magic Orchestra. Okay. I got more homework. All right. I'm about to mention a name that is probably... how do I say this? I'm going to mention a name that is probably frowned upon by a lot of people because of the kind of music he does. But go listen to his early stuff. Especially like his first maybe 3 or 4 albums. I'm going to mention, here we go, Yanni. My first, and I got to see him live too in 2004. You want to talk about a show that was perfectly mixed, that sounded absolutely amazing. I don't think they used any playback at all. I saw him in 2004. He had, the orchestra and the band and some of the best musicians that I've ever heard live, at the time. But if you go listen to this album here, this one's called Optimistique. This is a re-release. This is a re-release copy. I'll keep that in mind, electronic composer. I'll have to reach out to you at some point. Um, I'll let you know at some point when I'm going live, and I'll send you a StreamYard link. But I think I'm almost thinking about maybe diving more into my jazz fusion stuff at some point. But anyway, back on topic. So, um, Keys to Imagination and Optimistique. This was his first album. This was his second album. So he did this one independently. Um, and then he got the deal with Private Music, which was a label run by Peter Bowman of Tangerine Dream. And I think Yanni went with that. He had a couple of contract options at the time, but he went with that one because of Peter Bowman's, work with Tangerine Dream. And then they end up putting this album out called Keys to Imagination. So really, um, this was, I would say his even though this was his debut here, it was kind of released on a limited, in a limited run until it got reissued. This, what I would say, was the one that kind of brought him a little bit, forward. But he didn't get as big as he got until Live at the Acropolis, in '93. Um, and that was the concert video, and I saw it on PBS. That was the video that turned me on to him, and really, I just like looking at all the keyboard stuff. Like, he had three keyboard players, each one of them had like five or six different instruments, and I was trying to pick out, what each rig had. Um, I know he had, I want to say his controller was a KX88, and then he had a DX7 and then a Korg M1 on one side, so he had two banks of keyboards. Um, he probably had another 88 behind him and a Soundcraft soundboard, and then on the other side he had a Prophet VS and an Emulator 3. So this would have been before the Korg endorsement, where he was using all the same, keyboards. Um, it is a bit tough, but I would say if you were gonna listen to anything, um, just listen to this one first, and just start with this one. It can get pretty proggy in spots. Like the Sphinx and Butterfly Dance. Butterfly Dance has some time signature stuff in there that's really cool. Um, but you can tell, where he was starting from, and he was doing all this himself, like in a basement studio. So this album was recorded in a basement, and so was this one. And I want to say he got a Sony digital tape machine at the time. Um, one of these, um, I think it was the album after this that had a song called Marching Season, which is probably my one of my favorites of his. Um, oh yeah, gosh, yeah. Um, on this one, there's a track called Nostalgia that's in 5/8. That's a very tough piece to play. I've tried it. It's better here than I think it is on Live at the Acropolis, because here you can hear he's pretty much doing everything other than maybe the drums. So I would say these are not only um, good studies for, sound design, but also maybe for arranging, and then production. Um, Especially this one, because he was, think about it, he was kind of creating all the sounds from scratch. There aren't any presets on here, I don't think. I couldn't even tell you what his setup was on this particular album. Um, but you also know that he started off playing in a rock band called Chameleon, in I think up in Minnesota. I think it was where he was. He was going to college at the time. He had joined a band called Chameleon, where he met his current drummer, a guy named Charlie Adams, who's a fantastic drummer, by the way. Um, they were doing a rock and roll originals. They did some Zeppelin covers. They did you know, his more adventurous material, like a tune called "The Sphinx," according to his autobiography. Um, I've heard tales that the only music he listens to is his own. Kind of weird, but also I can kind of see that where he doesn't want to be influenced by anything else. He wants to make sure that he's creating something original, you know, because that can happen. I mean, um, John Tesh, oh yeah, live at Red Rocks, great concert. Um, I will say I like his early stuff. I would say all the more, and believe it or not, John Tesh played with Yanni at one point. I can't remember the tour, but he talks about it in his autobiography. And he was doing Entertainment Tonight at the same time, um, at one point, and then Yanni ends up getting him his first contract with Private Music, which was the label that he was on. So there's a little bit of trivia for you. But I've heard John play, and John's a brilliant musician. I love that stuff. I'll give you some more. How about George Winston? I've got a few of his solo piano stuff. There's another guy named Michael Jones. If you want just some background, stuff, where you're not really kind of focusing on what's going on, but you can, um, I definitely would recommend George Winston and Michael Jones. Definitely those two. Um, but as far as, all right, I saw a question here. Fave fusion bands. Um, I would say definitely Yellow Jackets. Um, that's a big one for me. I love that sound. Um, the Dave Weckl band. Um, Kind of spotty in some places. There was another. Trying to think of the names. Yeah, definitely Yellow Jackets, Rippingtons. Um, Obviously Weather Report. I got to throw that in there. Um, I'll say Mahavishnu Orchestra. With you had Chick Corea, Al Di Meola. I've got a bunch of Al Di Meola stuff too. That's absolutely brilliant. I would say those ones are kind of the top for me. I could also mention I don't know if I would consider Brand X. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, Brand X I'll mention. Yeah, English jazz fusion band that had let's see. At one point, Phil Collins was a member of that band. So I'll say Brand X. Oh yeah, Wyndham Hill label. I've got a bunch of Wyndham Hill stuff in here that I could pull out. Honestly, if we were going to do a topic, um, if you and I were going to do a topic, definitely we could easily rattle off some Wyndham Hill stuff. Um, I think what I'll do at some point is maybe I'll reach out to you, figure out when our schedules line up, and we can do a show on maybe say our like top five favorite Wyndham Hill artists or even albums. So that could be a cool idea. Um, so I don't really. I'll have to do some more searching around YouTube, but I don't know if that stuff is talked about a lot. But um, I know George Winston was there. Michael Jones was on that label. There's quite a few artists on that label. Pretty sure Shadowfax was there too, but yeah, Percy Jones. Yep. Oh gosh, yeah, so good. Um, Pat Metheny group. I'll throw out there. I already mentioned that. That's a given. I'm sure I've got some more stuff, in the jazz, sections, but um, All right, so I'll let it go for another few minutes. But anyone have any other questions for me about this topic? Um, I'll wait a few minutes here. I've got, like I said, I've got some other. I've got Jan Ackerman. I've got a Jan Ackerman solo album in there. He was with a band called Focus. Um, but yeah, I got to pull that out. I think I've got a Larry Carlton album or two in there somewhere. I'll have to double check. But talking fretless basses, I love Mark Egan as a bass player. So good. That's a whole nother topic. Um, do, do, do. Looking over at my CDs to see if there's anything else I can pull for favorites, but I think I've talked about everything that I'm into. I don't want to do any negative stuff. I don't want to talk about any things that I don't like, things that I can't stand, unless I do it with a comic, you know, flair about it. Because you got to remember, we all like different things. I don't think there's no two people that like everything the same. Like we were talking about, like just with Yanni recently, and with Survivor as well. Um, can't all like the same stuff, but you know what? That's okay. Um, it's kind of like, I've mentioned this on the channel. Kind of like, a lot of people aren't too big in, I don't want to bring up the topic of clothing and things that I wear, but that's all different. I mean, I prefer wearing sleeveless stuff because it's the way I'm the most comfortable. It's not so much to do with the look; it's more of the comfort. But I've talked about that on the channel quite a bit of times. Oh yeah. Oh, there's so many, but Wyndham Hill popped into my head. But I'm sure there's other topics, other shows that we could do. But I'm thinking like, oh, that could be a fun topic. Favorite keyboardists, there's so many places we could go. Um, Even topics like, oh, bands or artists that you used to despise, but over time you've grown to really like. So that kind of a topic, or overlooked albums from bands you love. So maybe like albums that fall under the radar that don't get talked about by a favorite band, like Elton John's Blue Moves that we talked about earlier. Things like that. There's so many different places I can go with this. Um, but yeah, anyway, so now we've been going for a while. So it's getting a little after 9:30 over here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call it a stream. This was a fun little topic to chat about. If you haven't checked it out, go check out my top 10 favorite albums of all time. Those are albums that I don't talk about here. Um, but definitely check that one out. Um, so, all right, now time for the obligatory. Yeah, I had a great time to Electronic Composer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead with the obligatory like, comment, and subscribe stuff. I'm sure you all know about that, but if you don't, if you enjoyed this stream or anything else on the channel, be sure to subscribe and click the notification icon. That way you get notified anytime I go live or anytime I release a video. I don't have a set schedule because I am so busy with so many other projects going on, juggling 3 bands, plus another very big thing coming up in August that I might be talking about soon. Um, as far as gear reviews, I don't have anything in the pipeline at the moment. I might do I might pull out the Roland VR 760 when I get some time. I'll definitely have time once the school year is done at the beginning of June to possibly chuck in a couple of more review videos of some things that I've got laying around. Um, if you're interested in hearing any of my music, go over to my Bandcamp page. I didn't do this on the last stream, but I will do it here. I will throw the link up right now. Yeah, there it is, right down there. Trying to line it up. Yep, see it's right there. Oh, there it is again over here. This is me being funny. JustinHavey.bandcamp.com. You'll find a lot of my music there. If you like anything over there, I highly encourage you to purchase some stuff from there. It definitely helps me out and helps me continue to make these videos and these topics, discussions, and it allows me to continue making the music that I make. So, all right, well, there it is. That's going to do it for this stream. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Take care.